The day he found her, the mountain meadow looked too beautiful to be real. Sunlight spilled over green cliffs and cut the air into gold. Crystals floated above the valley like broken pieces of a rainbow, turning slowly, humming like distant bells. And in the middle of that impossible place, something tiny was crying. He almost walked past it, because his eyes had learned to ignore miracles. 7 months stranded on a foreign world taught a man to look only for water, shelter, and threats. Not for glowing flowers. Not for floating stones. Not for the kind of wonder that made the heart ache. But the sound, the small sound, like a wounded child trying not to be heard, grabbed him and would not let go. He stopped. His boots sank softly into grass that glittered. With blue pollen, pastel mushrooms rose in little clusters, pink and violet, like lanterns left for travelers who never came home. He lowered his pack, turned his head and listened again. There it was, a thin, trembling breath, a soft, broken whimper, and then the smallest voice he had ever heard, pleading in a language that was not human, but somehow still understandable, like meaning itself was reaching for him. He moved slowly, because predators loved pretty places. He knelt behind a rock, shifted his weight, and peeked over the edge. She sat on the stone like a doll left in the rain. Teal skin, smooth as polished jade. Big dark eyes glossy with fear. Pointed ears, delicate as leaf tips. 2 little stalks on her forehead with bright blue tips that pulsed faintly like someone had trapped stars inside them. She wore a thin cream dress, simple and torn at the hem, and her small hands were curled against her chest, as if she was trying to keep her heart from falling out. For a moment he forgot to breathe, not because she was strange, but because she looked so young, so helpless, so painfully alone, and because there was blood on her ankle, dark against teal, and a metal ring clamped around her wrist, humming with a sharp, cruel energy. His throat tightened. He thought of his own daughter back on Earth, the one he had not seen in years, the one he promised he would come back to. He thought of all the messages that never reached the sky because his ship had broken in silence. He thought of the emptiness that followed, day after day, like a slow death. And then the tiny alien looked up. Her gaze snapped onto him as if she had been waiting for him specifically. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened, and she whispered one word that made his blood run cold. Human, not as a guess, not as a question, as if she knew, as if she had been searching. He should have backed away. He should have remembered every warning, every training module, every survival rule about unknown life, unknown tech, unknown minds. But he did not, because her voice shook, and because fear does not sound different across the stars. He raised both hands, palms open, showing he carried no weapon in them. His gloves were worn, his jacket dusty, his face rough with weeks of hardship. He forced his voice to stay soft, steady, kind, easy. You are safe. I am not going to hurt you. She blinked. Slow, like she could not believe the words could exist. Then the stalks on her forehead flared bright blue, and she flinched as if the light itself hurt. The metal ring on her wrist pulsed. A thin line of red spread along her skin under it, like heat, trying to burn its way into her bones. He saw it then, the restraint, the collar for her wrist. Somebody had chained her. Somebody had hunted her. His jaw clenched. A heat rose in his chest. The kind that came when you saw cruelty and could not look away. He crawled closer, careful not to startle her. The meadow hummed around them, crystals turning in the air like silent witnesses. He stopped at arm's length. Her breath came fast. Her shoulders trembled, but she did not run. He pointed at his own wrist, then at the ring. Then back to her. He spoke slowly, using the simplest voice he could, like he was talking to a frightened child. Can I help? Can I take it off? Her eyes filled again. She swallowed hard. Then she nodded once, very small, very desperate. He took out a compact tool from his belt, a cracked multi-cutter from his emergency kit. He had used it to open sealed rations and strip wire. Now he held it like it was a key to someone's life. The ring was alien metal, smooth, seamless. With no visible lock, it vibrated faintly when he brought the tool near. As if it recognized intent, he felt a prickle across his skin. A warning, a threat, a promise of pain. He glanced up at her. She watched his hands like a person watching the edge of a cliff. Her lips moved soundlessly, as if she was praying. He tried a gentle cut. Nothing. He tried a different angle. The ring flashed, and a sharp sting bit his fingers through the glove. Hissed, pulled back. The tiny alien gasped like she blamed herself. She shook her head fast, and the blue tips on her stalks flickered wildly. No, she whispered, not in the word, but in the feeling. Danger. He could leave, he could walk away, he could pretend he never saw her. No one would blame a stranded man for choosing survival over compassion. But the thought made him feel sick, and the memory of his daughter's face made him feel worse. He leaned in again, slower, smarter. He watched the pulse of the ring. He listened to its hum. He realized it was reacting to force, reacting to cutting, reacting to resistance. So he changed. He softened his hands. He spoke to it like it was alive. Like it was a frightened animal too. Easy, easy, no fight, no fight. He slid 2 fingers beneath the edge. Just enough to feel the heat. He did not pull. He did not twist. He simply held. Steady, patient. The ring pulsed once, twice. Then the hum dropped lower, like it was relaxing. A seam appeared, thin as hair, invisible until that moment. His breath caught. He pressed gently along the seam. A soft click answered, like a lock that finally surrendered. The ring opened in his hands, fell away from her skin, and the blue light inside it died. The tiny alien sucked in a breath so deep it sounded like she had been drowning for days. Her shoulders collapsed, her eyes squeezed shut, and then she did. The last thing he expected, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his glove. Not a human gesture, not exactly, but close enough to break him. Gratitude hit him like a wave. And something else too, something heavier. A sense that by touching that ring, by breaking that chain, he had stepped into a story far bigger than his own. He swallowed hard. He looked around the meadow, suddenly aware of how exposed it was. How bright, how open, how easy to spot from above. A beautiful trap. He gently lifted her, surprised by how light she was. She fit against his chest like a child, trembling, warm, real. She did not resist. She clutched his jacket as if it was the only solid thing in the universe. He whispered, low and urgent, "We have to go now." Her eyes snapped open. The blue tips on her stalks glowed brighter. She looked past his shoulder, toward the line of trees at the edge of the meadow. Her small fingers tightened. Her mouth formed a word without sound. Hunters. He turned, and the air changed. The meadow's hum sharpened, crystals vibrating faster. The flowers seemed to fold slightly, as if bracing for impact. And then he saw movement between the trees, tall shapes, armored, sleek, not native to this world. Their helmets were narrow, their limbs long, their steps too quiet for bodies that size. Weapons in their hands that shimmered like heat over stone. They moved with the confidence of people who believed the universe belonged to them. The man's heart slammed against his ribs. He had no ship, no comms, little ammo, and barely enough food to make it another week. But he did not put her down. He did not back away. He ran. Grass whipped his legs. Sunlight flashed off floating crystals, blinding for a heartbeat. He pushed through flowering brush, his pack bouncing against his spine. The tiny alien held tight, her face buried in his shoulder. Behind them, the first shot hit the rock she had been sitting on. Stone exploded into dust and glittering shards. A second shot cut a line through the air near his ear, hot, close. A warning that they could have killed him already if they wanted. They want her alive, he realized, and the thought terrified him more than death. He dove behind a ridge, slid through loose soil, and pressed his back against the earth. He forced his breathing quiet, controlled. He looked down at the tiny alien. Her eyes were wide, but not empty. There was intelligence there, bright and sharp, and beneath the fear, there was something else. Something like responsibility. like she carried a burden too big for her small frame. He whispered, "Who are you?" She trembled, then lifted one hand, pointed to herself, and spoke slowly, as if the words were heavy stones. "Kira." Then she touched her chest again, and her eyes shimmered with a grief that did not belong to a child. "Heir." The man froze. He stared at her, trying to understand. Heir to what? To a tribe, to a family, to a title. A shadow passed over the ridge, and his time for questions ended. The hunters were spreading out, surrounding, searching. Their boots did not crunch the gravel, they glided, as if their armor softened sound. He looked around and saw his only chance, a narrow crack in the cliffside, half hidden by vines and blue flowers. A cave mouth, small, jagged, dark. He pointed and whispered. There Kira's stalk tips glowed, and she nodded hard. He sprinted, ducked inside the crack, scraped his shoulder against stone, and squeezed through. The cave swallowed them, cool and damp, the light dropping away behind. He kept moving until the darkness thickened, until only faint glows from cave moss painted the walls in pale green. He set her down carefully on a flat stone. She sat, hugging her knees, trying to make herself smaller. Outside, muffled voices clicked and hissed. Not human, not friendly. The man pressed his ear to the rock, listening, counting their steps. His fingers tightened around the one weapon he still had, a compact sidearm with only a few shots. He thought about surrender, about bargaining. Then he remembered the burn marks under her ring. He remembered the way she looked when she said hunters. No, he thought, not surrender, not to people who put chains on children. He turned back to her and forced his voice calm, even as his chest shook with fear. "Kira, listen to me. I do not know your world. I do not know your rules. But I am not giving you back." Her eyes filled again. The blue tips on her stalks pulsed slowly now, like a heart calming down. She lifted one hand, and to his surprise, she touched his cheek very gently, like she was memorizing his face. Then she whispered, raw and small, "Saved." The word hit him like a blade. Saved, not just from the ring, saved from whatever fate waited if the hunters caught her. He swallowed hard. His throat burned. He nodded once. "Yes," he said, and his voice broke. "Saved." A sudden metallic clack echoed at the cave entrance. Then a low whine of cutting energy. They were opening the rock, slicing through stone like it was paper. The man's pulse roared in his ears. He grabbed Kira, pulled her close, and ran deeper into the cave. The tunnel narrowed, twisted, opened into a chamber where crystals grew from the ceiling like frozen lightning. The floating crystals outside were beautiful. These were different. These were sharp, ancient, and they hummed with a power that felt like a living thing. Kira stared at them, her breath catching. Her stalk tips brightened, and then, in the center of the chamber, one crystal responded. It glowed, it shifted, it rotated toward her as if recognizing her. The man stopped, confused. Kira stepped forward on unsteady feet, drawn like a magnet. She raised her small hand, palm open. The crystal flashed, and the air changed. A low tone filled the chamber, deep and resonant, like a giant awakening light. Spilled across the walls, painting symbols that were not carved but alive, moving, rearranging. The man backed up, instinct screaming. But Kira did not flinch. She stood straight, tiny shoulders squared. As if she had practiced this moment in nightmares, she spoke, voice stronger now, layered with something that made the hair on his arms rise. "Open." The crystal answered. A section of the cave wall shimmered, softened, and unfolded like fabric, revealing a doorway of pure light, not a natural opening, a gate. He stared. Stunned, he looked at Kira, then at the gate, then back at Kira. His mouth opened, but no words came. Kira turned to him, and the sadness in her eyes returned, heavier than before. "Home," she whispered. "Need home." Outside the chamber, the cutting whine grew louder, closer. The hunters were almost through. The man's survival instincts screamed that portals were traps, that unknown gates led to death. But then he looked at Kira, at her bruised wrist, at her torn dress, at the courage forced into her small body. He nodded once hard, like a man stepping off a cliff because the ground behind him was already burning. Together. He said, "We go together." Kira's eyes widened, her lips parted, then she nodded fast. Fierce together, they stepped through the gate. For a heartbeat, the world became soundless white. Then gravity returned in a different way. Air shifted, warmer, cleaner, filled with a faint scent like rain on metal. They emerged into a hallway that was not stone, not steel, but something between. Smooth and luminous, walls curved gently, alive with soft light. The floor felt solid but almost weightless. Like walking on a calm sea, the man turned in a circle. Disoriented, he expected a room, a cave, a ruin. Instead he saw an entire structure. Vast, elegant, impossible, and then he saw the windows. Not glass, but clear fields of light, opening onto a view that made his knees weaken. Stars, thousands of them, sharp as needles. A spiral of galaxies like a river of fire, and below, a planet with rings, blue oceans, and bright city networks glowing along its night side. He stared, breath-trapped. His stranded little life suddenly felt like a grain of dust. He looked down at Kira, and his voice came out as a whisper. "Where are we?" Kira swayed, tired, her stalk tips dimming. She leaned against his leg, like the gate had taken what little strength she had left. She whispered, "Sanctum." Then she closed her eyes and slumped. Unconscious, in his arms, he caught her, panic flashing. He checked her breathing, felt her tiny heartbeat. Steady but weak, he looked around, suddenly aware that he might have stepped into the heart of someone else's empire. A soft tone sounded behind him. He spun, gun raised. A figure stood in the hallway, tall and graceful, draped in flowing fabric that shimmered like water. Its face was alien but gentle, with eyes that reflected starlight. It lifted both hands, palms open, mirroring his earlier gesture. The figure spoke, and the translator in his mind, or in the air, or in the sanctum itself, made the words land clearly in his head. "Put down the weapon, human. You are in the house of the crown." His stomach dropped. "House of the crown." Kira said, "Heir, Heir, crown hunter's ring." He tightened his grip on Kira. His voice came out rough. "Who are you? Where did you take us?" The figure's gaze softened, then sharpened, not at him, but at Kira, and in that look, the man saw something like reverence, like fear, like relief, all tangled together. The figure bowed deeply, not to him, to the tiny alien in his arms. "The crown heir has returned," the figure said, voice trembling. "By the living stars, she has returned." The man froze, his mind raced. Heir to what? To a city, to a fleet, to a throne among the stars. The figure lifted its head and looked at him, eyes bright, measuring, urgent. "And you, human, you brought her through the gate. You broke the chain. You stood between her and the hunters." The man swallowed, his mouth dry. He tried to speak, but the words stuck, because the weight of it was crushing. He was not a hero, not anymore. He was a tired man with dust on his boots and loss in his chest. The figure stepped closer, careful, respectful. It reached out, not touching Kira, just hovering a hand above her, as if reading her presence. "She is depleted," the figure whispered. The ring drained her signature. They were trying to erase her, so the galaxy would accept a false successor. The words hit the man like a punch. Erase her, a child heir hunted by people who wanted power. He tightened his arms around Kira, and something fierce rose in him again, the same heat that made him rip the ring away, the same stubbornness that kept him alive this long. "Tell me what to do," he said, voice low, urgent. "How do I keep her safe?" The figure's eyes widened slightly, as if it did not expect that question, as if most beings would. "Ask for reward first, or escape, or a way home," the figure answered softly. "You already did what no guardian could. You saw her as a life, not as a prize." A second tone sounded louder, and the lights along the hallway shifted, turning faintly red. An alarm, a warning. Figure stiffened, its gaze snapped to a panel of light that formed in the air, showing star maps, ship signatures, vectors converging like knives. The hunters followed, The figure said, voice tight, "They have breached the outer shadow. They are coming to the sanctum." The man's heart slammed. He looked down at Kira's small face, peaceful in exhaustion, then back up at the figure. "Then we fight," he said. And one word came out louder than he meant, "We fight." The figure stared at him, then bowed again, deeper this time. A gesture that felt ancient. "If you choose this, human," the figure said, "you will become a marked name across the galaxy. They will hunt you. They will tempt you. They will try to break you." The man's throat tightened. He thought of Earth, of his daughter, of the long quiet years. He thought of how he failed to come home, how every day since had been punishment. Then he looked at the tiny Heir in his arms, and he realized something that made his eyes burn. Maybe this was why he survived, not to return, but to protect, to finally be the person his daughter needed him to be, even if she never saw it. Nodded once, firm. "I choose," he said. "I will not hand her back to monsters." The figure touched the air, and the hallway opened into a wide chamber, a room like a throne hall made of light and crystal. Platforms floated at different heights, and above them, a dome displayed the stars like a living map. Warriors appeared from doors that were not doors, moving silently, efficient, armored in sleek suits that looked like they were grown, not built. They stopped when they saw Kira. Every single one of them bowed. The man's chest tightened again. He had never been bowed to in his life. Not like that. Not with that kind of devotion. The figure addressed them, voice carrying like a bell. "The crown heir is here. She is weakened, and the usurpers have followed. Prepare the shield lattice. Call the loyal fleets and seal the sanctum gates." The warriors moved at once. Light panels bloomed in the air, symbols flared. The dome above shifted, showing incoming ships, black silhouettes against starlight. The man stood near the center of the chamber, holding Kira, feeling out of place among elegance and power. He had dirt under his nails and scars on his hands. He was not one of them. But then Kira stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, her eyes opened, and the moment she saw the room, something inside her changed. Fear was still there, but it was wrapped now in a quiet, heavy knowing. She looked at the warriors, at the figure, at the dome of stars. Then she looked up at the man, and her small hand rose to touch his cheek again. "Safe," she whispered, "with you." His throat closed. He blinked hard. He forced the emotion down only enough to speak. "I am here," he said, voice shaking. "I am here." Kira turned her gaze upward, toward the star map. Her stalk tips began to glow brighter. Brighter, brighter, the room responded, lights rising, crystals humming. As if her presence was a key that woke the whole sanctum, the figure watched in awe, whispering to itself, "The signature returns. The crown recognizes her." Kira lifted her small hand toward the dome, and her voice came out different now, still soft but layered, resonant, carrying authority far beyond her size. "Open the voice," she said. "Let the galaxy hear me." The man froze. The warriors hesitated, stunned. Then the figure bowed. "As you command, Crown Heir." Light rippled outward from Kira's hand. The dome brightened, and a wave of sound, a broadcast, a call, surged into the void, across star systems, across fleets, across stations and worlds. Kira's voice, small but unbreakable, filled the chamber. "I am Kira of the Crown Line. I live. I return, and I have been saved by a human." The words hung in the air like lightning. The man's heart pounded. A human, in the center of a galactic succession crisis. A human named in the same breath as a crown line. Outside, the first enemy. Ship crossed the sanctum boundary. The dome flashed red. Shield lattice woke. The chamber trembled with distant impacts like thunder under the floor. The figure leaned close to the man. Voice urgent, low. "They are here. If they take her, the galaxy falls into a false reign. Civilization fractures. Fleets turn on fleets. Worlds burn." The man stared at the incoming signatures. He had fought before, in human wars, on human soil. But this was different. This was the weight of entire worlds pressing down on one tiny life. Kira looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw the truth. She was not just a child. She was a symbol, a promise, a future. He adjusted his grip, steadying her. He set his jaw. And when he spoke, one word came out louder, clearer, a vow: nitrogen monoxide. He looked at the figure, then at the warriors, then at the star map. His voice carried now, not because he was powerful, but because he meant it with every broken part of himself. Tell me where to stand. Tell me how to hold the line. Because they are not taking her. Kira's small hand tightened on his jacket. Her stalk tips flared bright blue like twin stars, and she whispered, with a fierceness that made the air feel sharper. My guardian. The dome flashed again. A new signature appeared, larger, brighter, moving fast, not enemy. A loyal fleet responding. To her voice, the figure's breath caught, hope surging. They heard her. They are coming. But the enemy ships were closer. Too close. The sanctum shook harder, and the lights dipped for a heartbeat. Kira pressed her forehead against the man's chest, and her voice softened, trembling for the first time since she woke. If I fall, she whispered, they will rewrite me. They will wear my name like a mask. Promise me, human. The man's eyes burned. He swallowed hard, and his answer came out loud. Raw, absolute, I promise. He lifted his head, stared at the star map, and felt something inside him lock into place. Not fear, not doubt, purpose. Outside the sanctum, a breach alarm screamed. A section of the shield lattice flickered, and the first enemy boarding spear punched through the outer glow like a needle. Through skin, the man tightened his arms around the tiny heir to the galaxy. The warriors raised their weapons. The figure stepped forward, ready to die for a child who carried a crown. And somewhere beyond the dome, in the darkness between stars, the hunters finally found their prize. Would the galaxy remember the day a stranded human chose to stand in front of a crown and refuse to move?